This is your reminder that the BBC has yet to address the consistent transphobic leanings in its news coverage, and while the team behind Doctor Who is not connected to this in any way since this is a BBC-owned property, I'm going to keep pointing it out until the problem gets resolved. Links in a pinned comment below if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll stop saying it when it stops being a problem. Okay. So we have the conclusion for the war between the land and the sea. And first of all, if the pedants could just sit down, I do not need to hear about how there wasn't even a war. Look, if you want to complain about that, then you are complaining about the title, not the product. Was it possibly mislabeled? I don't think so. The war was a looming threat throughout the entire thing. The concept of war was a presence. I don't think it's a misleading title. However, if you came into this expecting for there to be an outright open warfare, weapons going off and people dying, if that's what you thought this was going to be based off the title and you didn't get it, my sympathies. I get that. Fair enough. But let that one go. Would you please? I kind of meant to say that last time. Oh, also another thing I meant to say last time. The weird thing about homo aqua being the term, and I kind of avoided using it last time because it came up so much in the first video. Lots of people still don't like it, even though it's kind of an established pattern that already happened with the Silurians. But they don't like it because it doesn't work in terms of the way that these terms are meant to function. They should only be called homo if they share a common ancestor with us, Homo sapiens, and they don't, so they shouldn't be called that. Neither should the Silurians be Homo reptilia. I've heard it. I get it. I don't disagree. I'm just also not hung up about it. Also, it made moderating the comments way, way, way worse because I've been doing this so long that early in the history of this channel, around the time that I came out, I had homo marked as a term to, just by itself, not as part of a larger word, but homo by itself marked as a term to automatically flag comments for review and not let them go live because at the time, I felt it was safe. Like, that's a term that if it comes up tends to be used derogatorily. And then I had to go through manually and approve like 15 comments with that damn, no, 15 is an underestimate. It was like 30. Anyways. Let's actually talk about this thing, shall we? I came into this with a bit of frustration based off, mainly episode 4. Episode 3 was mostly good until it got into the romance stuff between Barclay and Salt. Now, what I will grant is what is there for the 3rd episode, while I don't like it, and I personally feel the show did not do a good enough job to justify a romantic connection, A, and B, also didn't need it. I felt like they were well connected enough as characters anyways, and that was unnecessary. That having been said, what was in episode 3 was not bad. It didn't work for me. I did make the argument, I stand by it, that I do actually think that some of the romantic stuff done in episode 4 was actually not very well done. And didn't work for a number of reasons, including kind of feeling like there was a massive shift in personality for Salt. Not an unjustifiable one, but they didn't do the legwork to justify it. So that plus my just innate frustration with the fact that the series took that plot turn at all meant I was really down on episode 4. This is better. Is it a full recovery? No. But we are now at a point where, unlike, say, episode 4, where there is the fact that I just personally flat out didn't want and did not like the romance plot, I still made the argument there that even if you like this, I think this is still damaging the story. I'm not sure I can make that argument about episode 5, though, because I do think episode 5 is more a case of, okay, I don't like the choice you made, but you're executing that choice pretty well. And that's a lot of what episode 5 felt like to me. It does not just that, it does multiple things that I really would rather it hadn't done. But, and I don't know why this is my go-to thing that I point to for this. I should come up with another thing to point to, but it's kind of how I feel about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Is it what I want out of a Justice League movie? No. But if these are the creative decisions and the creative direction you are going to take it, that's a really good execution of that idea and those notions and those themes. Well, up until the epilogue scene. I pretend that doesn't exist. But anyways, not getting hung up on that. This is kind of the same thing. I don't like that the romance is, well, that it's here at all or that it's so prominent. I don't like some of the plot terms in regards to resolving this whole overall story. However, I can't say that they were done poorly. There are times you have to admit that even an idea that you don't like can still be well executed. Just like you have to admit that there are times that there might be an idea you like, but they botched it anyway. So this is, I suppose, the more positive version of that, where like they have an idea you don't like, but they did it pretty well. Yeah, that's the short version of this. Let's dig into it a little more, shall we? The dog thing might actually be case in point for an idea I don't like that I can't say was badly done. Because I don't like what I consider to be needless cruelty. I don't like it in general towards anything. I really don't like it towards animals and pets. I ripped into RTD for the death of the cat in Robot Revolution at the start of season 2 of Gatwa's Era. But as much as I did not like this idea, and at the instant I saw the dogs, running towards the ocean, I was like, oh, God, crap, don't do that. But then we hard cut to the negotiations. The guy's just going, you ate our dogs. And Ty just spits back at him, you ate our fish. Well, those dogs are our beloved pets. Those fish are family. I'm like, okay. I don't like the idea that they ate the dogs or that they harmed the dogs in any way. But if you're going to do it, this is a pretty good way to justify doing it and to make it clear that Homo Aqua, sorry if you hate the name, but them doing this at all was to make a point, and it wasn't done casually. It was done with purpose, both by the characters in the universe and by the narrative. So that's kind of my feelings about this whole thing in a nutshell. I'd rather you didn't do that, but fair play in how you did it. Another scene that kind of hits that similar note is Kate basically blackmailing the psychiatrist to not take her off duty. So this doesn't really go much of anywhere. Well, I suppose arguably this has some influence on the last scene, but we'll get to that. But for the most part, this doesn't really go anywhere. This idea that Kate should not be working right now and definitely shouldn't be handling stuff like that. That having been said, even while this doesn't go anywhere in the greater sense, I do kind of appreciate that it is at least acknowledged. You really shouldn't be here right now. And I like that her flat out, I was going to say basically, no, literally blackmailing this woman into letting her continue to do her job. I like that this is not treated as a girl boss hell yeah moment. The framing, the delivery of the lines, and the music underscoring it all have this sense of tension of, oh, that's a bad thing she just did. And I appreciate that. So, this is one of those things, do I love it as a character turn for her? Not especially, but it makes sense. It addresses what otherwise might be a logistical question of wait, they're just letting her keep doing this? No, they were going to stop her, or at least somebody was, until she did what she did. And also making it clear, just because we are meant to like Kate and think she's good doesn't mean that what she just did was a good thing. So again, well executed. While I am not a big fan of the Barclay Salt romance, what I will grant is they did his longing for her really well. Part of that's the performance. Russell Tovey really nails that. But also just beyond that, I think it's well written also. He has this line about how she made me somebody special and now she's gone and you don't know what to do with me. He is incredibly isolated. Well, I mean, honestly, from anybody, but also from the thing that just made him feel very elevated, not in like a supremacist, I'm better than anybody way, but he didn't feel special before. And that was something that isn't even necessarily tied to the romance, because we saw that like with him getting excited that he was getting to be the ambassador after initially, being terrified at the notion. But then after starting to build that connection, we saw that excitement that he thought he could really do something good in the world. Now all that's gone. So there is a certain amount of romantic entanglement with the longing, but also it does tie to other stuff as well, and it feels really justified. So the whole melting of the ice caps thing, there's some things I do and some things I don't like about that. I like it from Tide's perspective of like, you started this process, we're just speeding it up, and like, yeah, fair enough. And making it a really clear hard line, like, you have 5 years. You know what we can do. That's the time you've got. Chop, chop. So, like, as an enforcement mechanism, pretty solid. That having been said, like, the reveal that we get that they were already doing this even before the negotiations, that made me a little like, I'm not sure what to think about that. And then I made the decision, I don't like that, when we find out that Salt didn't know. That doesn't even make sense to me, really. Like, you could argue that kind of parallels how Barclay didn't know about the bomb, but like, I don't need those kinds of parallels. Like, the parallels that I was enjoying between Barclay and Salt were things like, their interest in, or their connection to, being parents, or in her case, wanting to have been a parent, but her children died. The eggs never hatched. So there were connections like that, like admitting to faults. They were connecting in a lot of ways. I don't need these kinds of parallels where like the Homo Aqua are just as underhanded and like, yeah, it like, it kind of makes them hypocrites. Like, they aren't necessarily being like, we were always going to drown you, but they were always going to put this enforcement mechanism in place and make it clear that they can and will do this no matter how the negotiations went. And that does bring a certain amount of hypocrisy into things. And I liked how valid and justified everything they did was. Not that there isn't some justification for this as well, but it feels like trying to drag them down to the human level a little bit with that move, while also absolving Salt. And like I said, it kind of doesn't make sense. Like, what do you mean you sent a negotiator who doesn't even know what you're doing? Like, again, I understand that can and will happen. Negotiators, especially on, a large scale like this, often don't have a particularly high degree of authority and will not know all the workings going on, but they have to do their best anyway. But again, that feels like a human issue, and I don't really like seeing it ported over to Salt and the rest of them. So, like, I didn't super love that aspect, and it felt like a cop-out. It just felt like a way to make them like a little bit more on our level, make them less like having the clear moral high ground, while at the same time not pulling Salt down. It felt contrived. So the whole thing with, well, we kind of have two magic words going on. There's accord and there's severance. Let's deal with accord first. I'm fine with how that ultimately resolves. When it was first introduced, I was like, what the hell is this? It is a word that they must take seriously. And all this. I'm like, what? So it's a magic word that you're just introducing at the last minute? Weird thing to compare it to. But it's like in the Twilight books, how out of nowhere they introduce this idea of imprinting, which, oh God, it's its own terrible thing. But like, forgetting the horribleness of that concept in those books and movies. But
they can't hurt her. Whoever a wolf imprints on can't be harmed. It's their most absolute law.
It is their most sacred law that literally never got mentioned until it was necessary to resolve the plot. You know, when Accord was first brought up and all this weight was put on it, kind of had that feel to it. The way it ultimately resolves is, I mean, it ties into the romance stuff, so it's a little like, okay, but we'll get to that. But ultimately fine. So Severance, something that I really, really wish I had mentioned in the earlier videos. There was a specific thing that I should have, I did call, but I should have said. I called immediately that Severance is going to be an attempt to mass genocide Homo Aqua. And part of the reason I wish I'd said something is because I also didn't want it to work. I didn't have a problem with them trying it. Like, that was fine. That tracked, especially with those generals and that nonsense. But I didn't want it to work. And I didn't want it to work for a couple of reasons. The first is it just feels very in line with what keeps happening to these species who have, frankly, a fair claim on the planet, because we can't risk upping the status quo of the world so that it starts to resemble our own world less and less, since for some reason we're not allowed to do that. This is probably always going to be what was going to happen. I really didn't want them to do that. I really didn't want there to be a big mass extinction event. I appreciate that they didn't wipe out all of them. And it does kind of circle back to the thing that I said before about idea I don't like, execution I do. Because we have the lines that Salt says, agreeing to move the survivors to this trench and saying flat out, like, yes, we agree. You killed us. We're terrified of you. And we recognize that you are putting us all in one place where you can dispose of us en masse at any time you want. I like the honesty of that. While I don't like it as a plot turn, it's too clean in terms of the overall status quo of the universe, the narrative fictional universe that we're in. It's too similar to other resolutions that we've had for this species or species like them. And I called it way too early. I just didn't want it to be a thing that actually happened. And that having been said, she's very brutally honest about, you will call this peace, but you have slaughtered us. You have won. And we will do what you ask, and know that this is because we fully expect you to wipe us out again later. I appreciate that it is never at any point framed as, an actual meaningful piece. It's not. And don't love that they did it. I do like the way they executed it. I was a little unclear on whether the sort of fates that we see for the generals and for the prime minister, if those were actual flash forwards or if those were just things that they were afraid would happen to them. I'm hoping it's the former. They deserve it. And I did like the scene with Kate basically trying to offer the prime minister a way out, and he didn't take it. Screw you, buddy. That said, like I mentioned it before, I don't like that they basically give us 3 clear-cut bad guys, that these now become individuals that, I hope they actually meet those fates. That just means that we're punishing the bad apples who did the bad thing and kind of letting humanity on the whole off the hook. And part of what I really appreciated about the first 3 episodes was that it wasn't doing that. It wasn't going to let just a few bad actors shoulder the blame for what was going on. But then the narrative took a direction where it was able to do precisely that. So, yeah, I've got my frustrations with that. But let's talk about the end. Barclay getting gills and going into the ocean. Again, it's well executed. It's well shot. It's good music. They play it really well. It's probably because I'm a parent. I would have really liked a better sense of whether he was ever going to be able to come back again, because he's got a kid. I got the impression that they were still in school, but like is on cusp of being an adult. Kirby, they don't need him in the sense of like being purely dependent, but like you love your kid, don't you? Your kid loves you. Like, we've had that demonstrated. I, for one, as a parent, would have felt more comfortable with Barclay, like, leaving to be with his fish girlfriend if it was clear that this wasn't like a one-way trip that he never comes back from. And not that I'm saying that it implied that it was, but I at least needed the reassurance that it definitely wasn't that, because otherwise it has tinges of abandoning your family for your new girlfriend. It has that tinge of guys in their 40s and 50s getting a sports car and getting a 20-year-old girlfriend and abandoning a kid and a wife, or in this case, an ex-wife, or what have you. And I know that's not what this is trying to be, so I would have appreciated a little more effort to ensure that it didn't have any chance at those optics. It doesn't heavily have those optics, but it has them a little. And I would rather it didn't have them at all. The last scene with Kate arguably mildly ties back into the fact that maybe she shouldn't be on duty at all and that she's kind of on edge. And I don't even think it's like necessarily a bad turn for her as a character. I think it's pretty understandable for all she's gone through. And again, I think it ties into her mourning of Christopher being pretty solid, despite, again, a plot turn I didn't like. Actually, doubly didn't like that one. I didn't like that they were dating in the first place, and I didn't like that they killed him on top of that. But like, for all she's been through, and she lost somebody really important to her, and the world has gone through all this, and this dude's just gonna throw a hunk of plastic on the beach, I'd be pissed too. It was just kind of an odd note to end on, though. Like, it's not an unjustified moment. It's just an odd moment to have it go out on. So yeah, did this fully recover from taking a turn I really didn't want it to take? No. Did it partially recover? Yeah. More than I thought it would, to be honest. And this might be one of those things that on a revisit, I might think better of it. Now, going in and knowing, all right, they're going to fall in love. I don't like it, but that's a thing that's going to happen, and I just have to deal with it. Because what can happen first time viewing for something like this is, part of me is like in the back of my head going, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And then they do it, and I'm like, God damn it. So, once I go in already knowing, okay, they're going to do this thing and I don't like it, but let's just deal with that and move forward. I might honestly end up thinking better of this on a rewatch. Not that I think poorly of it now. I really didn't need the romance angle. And I felt the resolution was the single most predictable way of wrapping this up in a way that didn't jostle the status quo. And that was disappointing. That's just, it's kind of cowardly. That's kind of a wimp move. Oh, well. It's still pretty solid. Like, as a piece of work, certainly if I'm looking at this and comparing it to entire seasons that we've had recently, season 1, season 2, with Gatwa, this is better as an overall package. I don't think any of the individual episodes rank above the best of those, the main ones being 73 Yards and Dot and Bubble, as well as some others that are probably better than any of the individual episodes in this. But as a complete package, it's stronger than either of those two seasons. And apparently got decent ratings. I haven't checked to see what the ratings for the 3rd and 4th and 5th episodes were, but I know the first two did quite well, like better than the main show, which is an odd thing. I don't know. Obviously, it has zero impact on the Disney deal. That's already done and dusted and fallen apart. But yeah, who knows? If it does ultimately perform well when it's on Disney Plus, it won't, because Disney won't promote it worth a dang, because they're already out on the deal. But one does have to wonder, does that still mean there might be some more of these kinds of things in future? Even though it couldn't save the Disney deal, it still seems to have been pretty well received. And yeah, it's solid. It's not amazing. It's not life-changing. But it's solid. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'll take it. So that's kind of it for Doctor Who until we get to whatever the Christmas special is next year. People keep telling me, like in comments, that it's confirmed David Tennant's going to come back as the 14th Doctor, and no, it's not, at least at time of my talking. It is not confirmed. That is the heavy rumor, and I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'm going to say it's better than even odds it does, but I don't want it to happen, and until it's been confirmed that it is, I won't be engaging with the notion. So, in any case, what do you folks think about this last episode in specific, or the overall miniseries? Whatever your thoughts might be, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. Those all help. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, you are loved. You are the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twilord, Mystic Shadow, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and shoutouts to some random folks from the lower tiers. Thanks to Callum Ray, 3 Muppets in a Trench Coat, and Alex Fireheart. If you want to hear me thank you by name, you can check out the reward tiers on the Patreon. You guys were pretty good today. Thank you.